I will be very honest with you. I don't think offloading all of your creative tasks or even your strategic decision making to an AI is a good idea because your productivity increases. It's not like you get more time back, you just get more work to do. There's more value accruing in your personhood as a result of AI because everything's going to be so efficient. We're going to have to question ourselves every time. Is this real? Is it not? That's what's going to sell.
Hey, Adam, thank you so much for joining me today on Search and Revenue.
It's a pleasure to be here, Daniel. Thank you for having me. I can't believe I get to look at this magnificent beard of yours for like the next 30 minutes.
Adam's coming to us from the Cloud Minders, among other projects, but as the CMO at the Cloud Minders, with some experience and insight into what it means to market software and to brand yourself in a very competitive AI space, and language modeling and software and hardware and how they interact. So we've got a lot to kind of riff about and talk about. Adam and I have talked in the past about the nuance of sharing information, educating consumers, getting a brand out there in a way that's memorable and solves problems. I wanted to bring him on the show to deep dive into that and kind of share some of those insights. So with the Cloud Minders and or any other projects you've worked on, how does your company position itself in the market when there are, layers of messages and feature sets that you want to get out there? What are the key messages you focus on in your marketing efforts?
Well, that is the question, right? And I'm actually going to punt this to one of my favorite leaders in positioning. Her name is April Dunford. She has authored 2 books, the first of which is called Obviously Awesome. I worked with her as a senior teaching assistant at Section, which is an online upskilling platform. They're really like into AI right now, but they also deal with a bunch of other business topics as well, one of which is positioning. And April is 100% correct on this. Positioning is really all about context. It's how you this is. She's not the first person to say it like this, but she's the first person to, I think, really get it simplified in a way that people can understand. You have to kind of control the narrative, and what you put out there needs to be in observance of what everyone else is doing so that you can have an opportunity to change the context. Because once you change the context, right, that's when you really get that positioning. Rather than trying to position the thing you have, shift the context around it. So for us, right, like the Cloud Minders, we offer high performance compute. We offer bare metal GPU servers, and we allow folks who are training artificial intelligence models or doing any kind of machine learning, access to those. It's kind of a commodity, right? And that's really unfortunate. We are not the only firm to offer this technology. So what we do is take a look at what we can build up around it. What's the story that we can build around it to bring to the market, right? Because it's not super differentiated, but we can make it distinctive. So the 2 things that we talk about is we are purpose building clouds, right? We are purpose building these AI clouds such that what you actually need is what you get. Nothing less, nothing more. It's tailor fit to you. And what that means is that we can cut a lot of the fat and some of the other things you're paying for with other services. You won't do that with us because we can custom build them for you. We also have this additional layer of a partner, not provider approach, because in this industry, a lot of what you get is access to this technology. But there's an additional layer of value that we can provide by partnering with you to make sure that you're using it optimally and that you're planning for the future. So we change the context. We're not just a GPU cloud. We are a full service entity that can bolt onto your operation and support your actual goals rather than just, offering some compute.
So to oversimplify it for me, like I'm picturing anybody can make pancakes, right? Literally anybody. But where you get your pancakes changes by the context, by the restaurant, by the atmosphere, by the service, by the customization, what kind of syrups you can put on top. And so that's where the context really matters, like how you're getting those pancakes.
I mean, yes, that, but like taking it even a step further, the story, right? The recipe of the pancake, right? Because I can go to Denny's and get a great pancake, or I can eat this pancake that's got a recipe dating back to the 1800s. I don't know. And that story is going to make it taste different, even if the recipe is largely the same. It's all milk, butter, flour, eggs, all that stuff.
Yeah, but you're going to taste the love in it.
Right, right. Mom's pancakes taste different.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Mom's homemade always tastes better. How do you guys translate that into your marketing messaging and advertising or conversations with partners? How do you distill that down and put it out there on the table?
So there are two answers to this question, right? The first answer is we just tell them what it is. We don't
Mm,
obfuscate it by creating a bunch of bullshit around it. We just tell people, look, it's purpose built clouds and a partner not provider approach, right? And anyone who is doing any kind of research is immediately going to start to peel that onion back and see what that actually means, because they're comparing us to other options. Now, oftentimes price becomes a maybe not the determining factor, but one of them, right? And
mm,
so where sometimes it is difficult to differentiate, where if that's not enough, what we're offering when we say that, we also have this layer of distinction, right? Not as in like, oh, we're so great, but I guess distinctiveness is probably the
mm,
better word to use here. And that comes through with our tone, right? Byron Sharp talks a lot about the difference between differentiation and distinctiveness, and he basically says that like most products on the shelf these days, they're all very similar. There's not a whole lot difference between them. What's most important is to be able to submit yourself in somebody else's mind, right? To create that
mm,
brand awareness. The image is important, but you get that brand awareness by being distinctive. You stick out. We're pattern recognition machines, and anything that deviates from that pattern, whether it's through the offer that you have, which can be very good, but may not resonate as much as this really distinctive tone of voice that you bring to the conversation, right? That stuff goes a long way. We like to think we're rational creatures that make really rational, logical decisions all the time, but sometimes we just pick the product because it's hot pink and our brain didn't forget it. That factors in.
the emotional decision making, yeah, sneaks in sometimes and surprises us. We think we're logical, we think we're rational.
The key on this is oftentimes the emotional response paves the way
Mm,
to the logical course of action. Right, we'll make a decision based on how we feel about something, but then we'll justify that decision later with the facts. Right, it's very
mhm.
rarely the opposite way around. I guess unless you're buying IBM, right? No one ever got fired for buying IBM, but still, that's an emotional thing, right? Daniel, you know
Yeah,
this. Like, I
yeah.
don't want to get fired. That's a fear based emotion, right? So IBM becomes the thing.
No, it's true. Caitlin Zhang, I was talking to her on another episode, said the same thing. She runs like an international branding company based out of the UK. She's from Canada, but originally born in China, and so she has to think about, as she's consulting these international brands, the rational logic that their clients are then using to pick them, but then also the emotional triggers. Like that really paves the way, like you said,
Yeah.
of warming them up subconsciously to go, yes, this is who I'm going to then rationally choose, even though there's this whole emotional backlog that's been placed in it before. Well, yeah, that's good then to kind of counterpoint that or contradict, not contradict that, but to kind of plays devil's advocate. How do you then utilize artificial intelligence in marketing initiatives? And what benefits have you observed? Keeping in mind, we're dealing with humans and emotions. So, how do you play with that?
I will be very honest with you, and I will tell you that I rarely make decisions before consulting with AI.
Mm,
And very rarely do I send finished pieces out without consulting AI one more time. I typically use ChatGPT, I use Claude, I use Perplexity for research, but within a very short amount of time, literally within the last 12 months, it's become a working partner for me. And it's a smart way to work as well. Um, I would never ever take something generated by AI and just wholesale put it out. That's a terrible idea. But what
yeah.
it is good at is challenging your perspectives in a way
Mm,
that's very non confrontational, right? It's almost like a conversation with a smarter version of yourself.
mhm.
I've got all of my AI assistants or agents or whatever we want to call them. I've got them set up to where they are intended to be adversarial, but there's no emotional or reputational collateral at stake. Whatever it says
Mm,
to me is fine. So it may set up a first draft. I'll work on it. I'll take it from there, develop some ideas a little bit further, feed it back in, bring it back out. And then finally, when I've got a final draft of whatever it is I want to put out there, I'll have it read it one more time and literally say, like, take me to task on this. Why is this not a good document? Why is this a bad message? How could we improve it? So it is integrated through every step of the process. And it's because it's just smarter than me. It can hold on to so many pieces of information concurrently that I simply can't. There's a downside to this, though. It's that because your productivity increases, it's not like you get more time back, you just get more work to do, which can be a good thing, right? It's more efficient. One person can get more done. But that has not escaped me. The first 3 months I was using AI, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all this amazing time I've gotten back. And now it's like, oh my gosh, look at all this amazing work that I've got to get done in an amount of time that I never would have been asked to do it before. All of that, though, all of that is true. I will say that I don't think offloading all of your creative tasks or even your strategic decision making to an AI is a good idea. It's a good place to start and then evaluate. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to start seeing much more effective communication that is clearly, right, written by a human. These interactions, like what we're having right here, where it's one person and one person, is still on a screen, right? It's mediated by
Right.
technology, but it's a little bit more authentic. That's
Yep.
what's going to sell. So the more human our messaging appears, the more authentic it feels. And I use that word trepidatiously because it gets overused a lot. That's how we're going to be able to assess whether or not something is real or whether or not we're interacting with, an artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you hit it on the head there. As the market and as the marketplace is filled with scaled, copy pasted, kind of robotic information and analysis, we're left almost with an appetite for authentic, to use that word, opinions and kind
Yeah,
of human angles on things. Um, so I think you're right. I think it's going to shine through, and it will just drive our appetite for that more as consumers, as business partners, even as marketers. We're going to look at, well, what is ringing true in this? Like, push the logical aside and let's go back to that emotional. The emotional connects with the emotional, right? And so
100%.
the rough edges of humanity and human created art and content is going to attract us. I think you're right. Which then
Absolutely.
kind of speaks to my next question of what upcoming marketing trends do you believe will have the most significant impact on the tech industry in the near future?
Anything that doesn't look optimized or efficient.
Mm,
A great example of this. I get probably anywhere between 5 to 10 LinkedIn requests a day. Um, Depending on how I feel, I'll just accept them all to clear them, or I'll decline them all to clear them. Sometimes I'll respond back, but I'll get messages along with them occasionally. And this is the first time this has ever happened. Instead of a written message, which could have easily been, mass copy and pasted across a bunch of messages, I got a voice, an audio file, and it was just,
oh,
"Hey, Adam, I wanted to introduce myself. This is what I do. This is how I think it might be helpful for you. Let me know if you're interested. If not, no problem." It was less than a minute, but there was a human connection there. And the fact that it wasn't polished, right? It wasn't one of those videos. I don't know if you get these in your emails now, right? Someone will record a video.
yep,
Oftentimes it's, I'll record an intro and then make it look like I've made this 5-minute video just for you. Um,
yep,
but if it felt, by virtue of being unpolished, it felt like an actual person interacting with me, which is valuable, right? Like that is a strong signal of value because someone took the time to do this. They didn't just make it super efficient for them. They didn't cast the widest net. They honed in on me for 60 seconds, crafted a personal message, said it, clicked off, and that was it. And I literally accepted the meeting request simply because I just thought,
yeah.
if someone cared enough to do this, then I'll go ahead and see what they have to say. And it turned into a wonderful 30-minute meeting. So we'll see what comes of it.
That's impressive and important, because even with now, like some of the AI deep fakes, and they're not even fakes, they're just out there saying this is AI created, can do video and audio, but
Yep.
it still has that thumbprint on it that is, oh, this is a copy pasted scaled version. and I'm a number, I'm a checklist.
Yeah. And we're not going to trust it. There's no way we can trust that stuff. And I've got a dear friend who works in the creative advertising industry, and he abhors AI. He just thinks it's
Mm.
terrible and it's going to ruin human creativity. And I told him the other day, I'm like, you do realize that what's going to happen is we are going to distrust so much of the media we consume now. It's actually going to, I think, push us closer together as people. Like
Yeah.
my guy, he's incredibly talented. He's an incredibly talented designer, but I'm like, there's tons of other incredibly talented designers out there. And some of them in the near future are going to be powered by AI. No one ever purchased time with you because you were a great designer exclusively. They did it because of who you were. Like there's more value
Mm.
accruing in your personhood as a result of AI, because everything's going to be so efficient. We're going to have to question ourselves every time. Is this real? Is it not? The only way to know for sure is if we're sitting down, having coffee, working together in the same space. That's my optimistic projection for what the impact of AI will be
I
on
like
human
it.
to human relations. Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
hope. We'll see.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world. They're not going to take over. They're going to try. But because of that, we'll band together as humanity in any great movie.
I was going to say I'd watch that movie. That sounds about right.
And find each other, and humanity will win out. Yeah, one of my closest writer friends feels very strongly the same way about AI, and watching just the writing, the content and written word industry massively changing.
Say a prayer for my copywriters out there.
Yeah, pour some out. I mean, but on the flip side, um, it's leaving this gap in need for good handwritten content, because you can tell the difference. Like you said at the beginning of the call, you would never go take just something straight out of an AI generation and publish it as great marketing, because it's not.
No.
It's missing something. It's always missing
Yeah.
something. So,
But I think you can have a little bit of that in the mix, right? Like there's something to be said for generating, SEO content. Now, granted, some of that is being, ranked down for being a little too overtly AI generated. But, for a lot of content production, some of it is literally just to rank for specific keywords. So there's a healthy mix to have in there, I think, right? It doesn't all
yeah.
have to be human generated, but there does need to be enough in the mix so that when a person is reading your website and not just a bot, they feel like they're connecting with something other than, some algorithmic content.
If you're creating content that is very structured and a step-by-step process to do XYZ, to change a setting on your computer, that doesn't really need a human touch. Like if you can lean mostly on AI to outline those instructions, and the instructions come out more efficient than what I would have written myself, go publish that guide that is actually truly more helpful than what I could have made. Great. But when it comes to the opinions and the art of it, yeah, you got to have both. You got to have balance. It'll be interesting to
100%.
see where it goes. So your company operates in a competitive space. We kind of talked about differentiating of your brand and your products in the space. If you guys do lean on content marketing in digital marketing, what role does that play in that subset?
So I think we've kind of been angling towards this for a while. And we are actually kind of immersed in our current strategy, which is to put as much of our people out on the internet through venues like podcasts, such as this one, to whatever extent that we can. And I think everyone at this point has kind of caught that podcast bug.
Yeah.
What's nice about a podcast, and you know this, let me sell your product back to you for a moment. What you have as a result of this podcast is a transcript, right? You also have
Yeah.
a video, and you have, sound. So you can cut that up into a number of different pieces of media really, really quickly. This is where AI becomes, hyper efficient. It can take human derived content and then just repackage it for different audiences that are going to find it at different times via different algorithms, right? It also allows us to take the words that we're communicating with right now, and then mine those for specific insights, which we can then turn into written content. All of it basically just becomes a source for more and more content generation. And I'll be honest with you, I'm probably going to sound a bit heretical by saying this. I think we probably have enough content, honestly. And I use not we just as the cloud misers, but just like people in general, us, you,
Yeah.
me, and the rest of our folks.
Mhm.
but it is still a solid way to create a flywheel of content that you can continue to spin out into other forms. So that is part of our strategy. The other big part of our strategy right now is to choose where we're not going to play. Very
Mm.
early on at the Cloud Minders, we thought about how can we generate the largest set of eyeballs on our content, and so we played across every single platform. And in fact, what we had to do was basically find the lowest common denominator that we could create for, size, shape, format, and put it on all of these platforms at once. And it actually, I think, diminished the quality of what we were able to produce because we were trying to target everything everywhere all at once.
Uh,
So we're scaling back a little bit, right? We observed what was effective and what wasn't, so now we can make a little bit more of an informed decision about where we want to play, and we want to play on LinkedIn. Imagine that, a B2B business playing on LinkedIn. But
Surprise.
that's where the leads are, right? That's where
Yeah.
the interest for this type of stuff is.
Mhm.
And so we're making a concerted effort to try and put more of our eggs in one basket to increase the impact, not while ignoring all the other platforms and opportunities that we have available to us, but to be focused and make strategic decisions about where we are, and more importantly, where we aren't going to invest a lot of our time, because we have a very finite amount of time.
Yep. That's really wise too. I mean, it's not advice you almost ever hear on any of these interviews or conversations is what not to do, where not to go. No one ever says, well, we make sure to cut back here. Like that's not ever the advice. The advice is how to expand, how to capture new markets, how to capture new audience, how to grow your following on every platform. But there's strength in that. There's strength in kind of that pulling back and going, okay, we're going to be really specific in the areas we know work or we know are worth the investment. On that note, have you guys noticed at all any sort of a migration or shift in focus or a better response on LinkedIn versus like X? Like X used to be a pretty solid place to go for some business interactions, but it seems like to me, depending on the audience or the industry, that's not all that it has been.
Yeah, X is a very interesting platform, and we've had some success there. I would not say a great deal. We've actually look. I'm just going to be point blank honest with you. The platform is so broken right now. We have a hard time logging in. Right, the number of times
Yep.
that our team has been kicked off of X and we've had to do the two-factor authentication to get back into our account is just it is insane for what the platform promises to be.
Yeah.
So because of that, it is a frustration. I think X though, it really champions personalities,
Yeah.
and we can play there a little bit, but I think it's more advantageous for our individual folks inside the company to have their presence as individuals on display rather than having the company on display there. We'll do the requisite amount of, content posting just so people don't forget about us. But
Right.
at the end of the day, like, ads don't go viral, not unless they're playing in a very rarefied space of being, perfectly in the moment with a really short and easy to understand message that resonates with a super broad audience. And we keep on shooting at that target, but going viral is not a strategy. It is something that you can aspire to or hope for, but it's a really bad strategy to put any type of bank on.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is similar, but the conversation that we can have there is a little bit more geared toward the type of people that we hope to see enter our funnel, right? So we're always kind of balancing this general audience awareness with focusing a little bit further down the funnel on people who are actively in the market, searching for what we're offering, and are in the process of making decisions.
Mm.
And we see a little bit further down the funnel happening on LinkedIn versus platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Good to have that content there, not where we're getting our leads.
Any sort of experience or insight on TikTok as banned for however many hours and then came back, and then on the B2B space that conversation is kind of growing. Like I'm seeing more and more brands starting to use it and get traction there. Have you guys played on the TikTok space at all?
We did a little bit. This was an interesting case study. We initially started posting on TikTok through Hootsuite. And we found that when we scheduled videos to be posted on TikTok, and they were clips from podcast interviews, just like this one, they would get next to 0 views. And we could not for the life of us figure out why. Because when we would post directly to the platform without having an intermediary like Hootsuite, we would always at least get the customary 200 views while the algorithm was testing out the content to see if it needed to go any further. That's not really an answer to your question, but it is an observation that I think is pretty interesting and worth noting. Oftentimes interacting directly with the platform will, advantage whatever content you're putting on it. As far as whether or not TikTok is a viable medium for advertising, for marketing, I mean, it's another touch point, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think there are some types of businesses, and largely they're going to be B2C businesses that will perform really well there, especially if they're, pushing the content by packing advertising dollars behind it. For us, it's not a strategic priority. Um,
Yeah.
maybe if we had a bunch of, very young Gen Z interns that felt very adept in that space and that's where they lived, we would take advantage of that opportunity. They're not in our company, so we're just not going to pursue it, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing cringier than a 40-year-old man trying to be popular to a bunch of 20 somethings on
Yeah.
TikTok. So, I mean, the medium is the message, I guess, is the point here, right?
Yep.
Is it valuable? Probably for a lot of folks. We have not seen the value for us. And for us, we have qualified it as more of a distraction than a strategic imperative.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like that's one of the stages you guys probably pulled back from, and wisely so. And to that note about the native uploading and posting versus through a tool, we've noticed the same thing
Yeah.
across projects and even on LinkedIn. When we upload raw, like straight on the platform, even though it's more time consuming, the algorithm likes that a lot. And I think it's because they own the media then, and so
Of course.
they get to push it as far as they want versus through this third party tool. But yeah, it's an interesting nod to the algorithm there, that they, their owned kind of walled media garden. They want you to publish there. They want you to share there. They want you to keep you there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Right on. Well, then, last question would be, how do you see the role of like SEO and search, kind of as it has been in the legacy versus how it is now with like Perplexity and some of the AI like chat agents offering search, Gemini? How do you see that world kind of evolving in the next couple of years and playing in that consumer journey, but like B2B journey in regards to what you guys sell at the Cloud Minders?
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I don't think you're going to see search die so much as you're going to see it evolve into something new. With some pros and some cons, right? Like I am not a huge fan of Google aggregating content from all of the websites it's crawling and then giving you an answer to your search without ever having to click into it. But right, like in the short term, that is not great. Websites oftentimes survive based on the revenue they generate from the advertisements they host on their pages. And if not that, generating leads on those pages for customers to then go deeper. It's going to change things. And I think what scares people and why they view this as like an absolute negative is not necessarily a lack of imagination, but a fear-induced response to not knowing what's coming next. Right? Things will change. I tend to take a fairly optimistic, if not cautiously optimistic approach on all of this. Things will change. They will be different. They won't be the same. It may not be bad. Listen, do I go to Google to search things anymore? Yes. Do I go there less? Very much so, right?
Mm.
Um, if I'm going to Google, it's often to look for a very specific thing that I know a trusted source is going to be able to provide for me. I'm going to get a little bit personal here. I like to collect trophies when I play video games. Right, I want to get that platinum trophy on every PlayStation game I play if I enjoy it. It is not always feasible for me to invest all the time into finding specific things in a game before I
Hmm.
want to move on to the next. So I will Google that because I know Google will have an article written by a human that has done this work, and it's going to have multimedia that will guide me through the process on some of these things. So that's an example, maybe not a B2B example, but that's an example of the type of content that I think search is going to continue to be relevant for. But if I need to have a conversation and not just find a piece of information, AI all the way. I'm
Yeah.
asking Google far less questions than I used to. Those are all being offloaded to ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity.
Yeah. Yeah. In personal behavior, the same shift has happened for me in what tool I'm going to go to, whether it's conversational, kind of getting that like smarter than me brain download right on something, then I go have a conversation with one of my AI chatbots. If I them and doing like a laser search or a laser focused search, I'm going to do Google because then, yeah, I'm going to probably find the Reddit forum where a real person has done the thing and written about how not to do it. Um, what's interesting is we watch that really closely because linkflow, like we do SEO, and so we need to
Mhm.
understand where and how people are searching, and so we're also considering how people are searching using these other tools, and then how to rank or show up in AI brain. um, what we've noticed and what we've seen in some other studies is that it's been a cumulative increase in both, that like users are still continuing to use Google more, search volumes are going up, which is crazy. There was a lot of initial fear of, well, Perplexity and ChatGPT and Claude, they're all going to replace Google, and it's actually just a net positive where like they are using those tools a lot. There are thousands and millions of searches happening and conversations, but for different purposes than that drive Google searches. So you might go have a conversation in AI that triggers something you then want to Google for. So yeah, the cautiously optimistic perspective is the one we're standing on too, of like
Yeah.
user behavior is evolving, but it doesn't isn't subtracting from each other necessarily.
I think that's it. I'd be curious to know what the ratio of search to clicks is on
Mm.
Google. Right? Are people stopping after the summary, or are they actually scrolling down past 2/3 of a page worth of ads to get to the first real ranked link? I don't know. Do you have that information? Do you have that
There's
data yet?
I don't have it in aggregate, but it's actually a metric that we lean on when doing our keyword research, is looking at clicks per search. And some keyword searches, some search terms have like a zero point 0.1 click per search, or even a 0 click per search, where you searched it, what area code is calling me right now from the spam number, and you see it in the AI summary. You don't need to click on anything. But a
Yeah.
lot of searches are upwards of 2 or 3 clicks per search, where somebody will search a phrase, they'll see the AI summary, scroll down, click the first result. It's not the result they want. So they go back to the search, they click the second result. And so we're still seeing numbers in the 2, 3, or 4 clicks per search range
Yeah.
where, yeah, there are 0 click searches, but it's not all of them. Um, there's still people doing that search in Google because they want to go to a website of an author or an influencer or a writer or a journalist or a brand or company that's selling the product that they want. And the AI summary doesn't solve for that.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a little wild west. It's a little like every day something kind of changes, but
I mean, frankly, if I were Google, I wouldn't want my AI summary to be too good, right? Because
yeah.
then it kind of dispossesses the most important people on your platform, the paying advertisers, from wanting to continue advertising on your platform. It
Yep.
needs to be good, but not too good. It's like planned obsolescence straight out the gate. That's an interesting
Yeah.
strategy. Actually, I don't know if I advocate for that or not. That's a hairy one. All right, for a
I
future
think
episode.
we'll have to get into that in episode 2. But I'll leave with this. They are putting more and more citation links in the AI summaries. And so what used to just be an AI paragraph that was a regurgitated collection of data from the internet is now a list of blue links like the old SERPs used to be. And so my kind of prediction and others is you'll be able to pay for ad space in those citation links. And so it'll just go back to being a list of organic and paid links that are citations for the AI summaries.
You
But we'll
can't
see.
kill capitalism, baby. It's a
Uh,
beast.
yep, we can try. All right, well, let's close with some lightning questions. Let's
Sounds
see.
great.
Thank you so much for all the insight and stuff on this call. I really appreciate it. It's been super fun. These are the questions I like to ask all my guests. Number one, what's the one MarTech tool you couldn't live without?
I'm gonna be honest with you at this point. It is a combination of ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity, and I know that doesn't technically qualify, but I get so much use out of those platforms. It completely overshadows everything else that I'm using.
Yeah, I mean, it qualifies if that's what you're using it for. It has
Yeah.
truly become one of the most competitive MarTech tools or tool set suites. Okay, what about favorite book on marketing or business or branding?
I have two answers for this. The first is a book by Roy Sutherland called Alchemy. And he does a really, of course, Roy Sutherland is the vice chairman at Ogilvy, famous for one of the very best TED Talks that's ever been given, in my opinion. He's done, I believe, 3 total, but it really kind of goes into the ideas that we've been discussing about how context plays into marketing and life, but also perception just in general. It's really kind of like the psychology of advertising. So that's my first recommendation. The second book that I tend to recommend to everyone is Derek Thompson's Hitmakers. This is not a marketing book per se, but it really kind of goes into the idea of how messages spread, and it is a super valuable text in that regard.
Nice. Added to my TBR. Let's see. Favorite podcast influencer, speaker, or channel?
Favorite podcaster, influencer, speaker, or channel?
After search and
I
revenue,
was
of
going to
course.
say why of course it's Daniel Horning, everyone. Man, my favorite one. So I used to exclusively run a brand strategy and design consultancy, and I would listen to a podcast called Two Bobs by David C. Baker and Blair Enns. And I really like their approach to value. And even though my main source of income is no longer the consultancy, some of the lessons that I learned from them in how to run an agency and create value and conduct sales in general still permeates the world that I work in now with Cloudminders.
Ah, nice. Good tip on that one. Okay, what's one key marketing insight you knew now you wish you knew 5 years ago?
What is one key marketing insight that I know now that I wish I knew then? Here's what I'll tell you. It is good to develop domain expertise, like get good
Mm,
at the thing that you're going to be good at. But once you've reached a certain level of proficiency, maybe not like expert level, go ahead and tie something else onto that, right?
mm,
Um, I, that's where the real interesting things start to happen in careers, right? This is, I think, how a lot of people are going to avoid being replaced by AI in general. How
yeah.
can we take expertise in one domain, marry it to another, and find synergies that were not immediately apparent? And it's very much that kind of copy, combine, transform method of evolving your career. Kirby Ferguson, I think, is the guy who did that video essay. Everything is a remix. That's a good place to start for that kind of thinking.
All right, and then last question. Feel free to plead the fifth if you need to. What's one story your team or colleagues haven't heard that would make their jaws drop when hearing it?
All right, here's the story. And I've never copped to this publicly, although it has long been suspected. When I was a very young professional marketer, some might even say immature, I worked for an institution that had yet not put together a social media policy. And I helped assemble that social media policy because it was like in the early days of social media, right? We're talking like 2007 to 2010, 2011. I thought it would be great to create a Twitter account that was obviously satirical, representing the institution for which I worked, while I was also in the marketing department. Uh, and it was great because I had inside information about the institution, and could make some fun jokes about it. And it became one of the most popular social media accounts. It was on Twitter, that the institution had any ties to, though it was very much not a part of their marketing stack at all. It was a very cavalier and stupid thing to do. And I think, I'm a rule follower, I'm a rule breaker, but I'm much more strategic now than I was then. And it is a wonder to me that was not investigated a lot more critically, and that I was able to eventually find a new job before getting fired. It was fun and lighthearted, and of course I cared about the place that I worked in the institution. But yeah, no, definitely created a satirical Twitter account for a place I was working while I was working there, while also running the entire social media strategy for the institution. Oh boy. All right.
That's a good one. Does it feel good getting that off your chest?
No, it feels very bad. No, it's
I
all
won't
good.
even ask. I won't even ask what company that was for. We can just leave that.
Well, see,
in the closet.
I'm basically Barbara Streisand affecting this now, because now folks are going to go through and try and Google all the other stuff
Yep.
that I've contributed to, and see if they can't track down the story. I mean, go for it. Let's see if Google's AI summaries can untangle this one for you.
Man, thank you, Adam. This was super fun.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.